Good morning, children. Today we are going to discuss about conservation of plants and animals. Introduction. Every living organism on the earth is made a member of dynamic community. That dynamic community is called ecosystem. Nature is born to us, the part of earth in which living and non-living organism exists is called the biosphere. It contains a huge variety of species living in it that depend on each other. The interrelationship of the species and the relationship with the environment to support life is called biological diversity. The community of organisms interacting with each other and the physical environment is called the ecosystem.
Ecosystem. See the aquatic ecosystem. Ecosystem is a completely unit that consists of living creature and no non-living matters. This community of organisms interacting with each other and their physical environment, including climatic change, is called the ecosystem. Do you know Earth is the only planet with life? There are numerous kind of plants and animals that exist on Earth. Earth has a suitable condition that are necessary for survival. Thus, we can say that on Earth, diverse form of life exists, like a variety of plants. Some have flowers and some have fruits. And animals, lion, deer, dog, snake, exist on Earth. Biodiversity. It is the term used for a number of different forms of plants, animals found on Earth. Maximum diversity is found in forest. For example, in forest there are a variety of plants and animals. We can say that it is a natural treasure, or it refers to the variety of organisms existing on Earth. All of these organisms have their interrelationship and their relationship with the environment. It includes a variety of plants, animals, and microorganisms. Loss of biodiversity is a serious problem, and the following are the reasons that cause loss of biodiversity. The loss of biodiversity is mainly due to sudden, unplanned, and disorganized changes in environment. In the ecosystem, the interaction between living, that's called biotic, and non-living, that is called as abiotic, is very important. There are a number of threats of biodiversity to be seen due to human behavior and activities. For example, human activities like deforestation. Biodiversity of India. India displays significant biodiversity, one of the 7th mega diversity countries. It is the home of 7.6% of all mammalian, 12.6% of all avian, 6.2% of all reptilian, 4.4% of all amphibian, 11.7% of all fish, and 6% of all flowering plant species. Threats to biodiversity. Some of the main threats to biodiversity are human activities and loss of habitat, deforestation, desertification, marine environment, increasing wildlife trade, and climatic change. Human activities and loss of habitat. Human activities are causing a loss of biological diversity among animals and plants, globally estimated at 50 to 100 times the average rate of species loss in the absence of human activities to most popular species in rich biomes or tropical forest and coral reefs. The tropical forests are under threat largely from conservation to other land uses, while coral reefs are expressing increasing level of overexploitation and population. If current rate of loss of tropical forest continue for the next 30 years, about 1% per year, the projected number of species that are remain forest could support would be reduced by 5 to 10% relative to the forest in the absence of human disturbance. The rate of decline would represent 1000 to 10,000 times the expected rate of extinction without deforestation by humans. Some studies suggested that globally as many as one half of all mammal and bird species may become extinct within 200 to 300 years. Biodiversity loss can result from a number of activities including habitat conservation and destruction, overexploitation of species, disconnected patches of original vegetation, and air and water pollution. Over the coming decades, human induced climate change increasingly became another major factor in reducing biological diversity. These pressures on biodiversity are to a large extent driven by economic development and related demands, including the increasing demand for biological resources. Decreased biodiversity also interferes with essential ecological services such as pollination, maintenance of soil fertility, flood controls, water purification, assimilation of waste, and the cycling of carbon and other nutrients. Deforestation. Forest ecosystem contain as much as 80% of the world terrestrial biodiversity and provide wood fiber and biomass energy as well as critical components of the global cycles of water, energy, and nutrient. Forest ecosystem are being clearly and degraded in many parts of the world. Current projection suggests that the demand of wood will roughly double over the next 50 years, which will make increasing use of sustainable forest practice more difficult. In addition to threats to biodiversity and potential shortage in the supply of forest product, the degradation of forest represents as an enormous potential source of greenhouse gas emission. Forest ecosystems contain about 3 times the amount of carbon currently present in the atmosphere, and about 1/3 of this carbon is stored above ground in trees and other vegetation, and 2/3 stored in the soil. Activities that reduce biodiversity, geoparadise, economic development, and human health through losses of useful material, genetic stocks, and service of intact ecosystem. Material losses include food, wood, and medicine, as well as a resource important for recreation and tourism. Loss in genetic diversity, like loss in species diversity, makes it even more likely that further environmental disturbance will result in the serious reduction in goods and service that ecosystem can provide. When forests are cleared or burned, much of this carbon is released into the atmosphere. According to the current estimate, tropical deforestation and burning account for about 1/4 of carbon emission into the atmosphere from human activities. Def- desertification. Desertification and deforestation are the main causes of biodiversity loss. Both processes are decisively influenced by the extension of agriculture. The direct cost of deforestation is reflected in the loss of valuable plant and animal species. Desertification process is the result of poor land management, which can be aggraved by climatic variation. Converting wild land to agriculture, often involving plugging the soil, which lead to the temperate region to an average decline in soil. Organic matter between 25 and 40% over 25 years. A decreasing soil organic matter is always a clear indication of soil degradation and often is accompanied by reduction in water infiltration, fertility, and ability to retain fertilizer. Plugging also exposes soil to wind and water erosion, resulting in large-scale pollution of freshwater resources. Marine environment. Oceans play a vital role of global environment. Covering 70% of the Earth's surface, they influence global climate, food production, and economic activities. Despite this role, coastal and marine environments are being rapidly degraded in many parts of the globe. In coastal area where human activities are concentrated, pollution, overexploitation of resource, development of critical habitats such as wetlands and mangroves, and water flow for poor land as practice have led to drastic reduction in near shore fisheries production and aquatic biodiversity. Increasing wildlife threat. According to Nick Burns, trade is another cause of biodiversity depletion that gives rise to conflict between North and South. Global trade in wildlife is estimated to be over the US dollar 20 billion annually. global trade include at least 40,000 primates, ivory farm at least 90,000 African elephants, 1 million orchids, 4 million live birds, 10 million reptile skin, 15 million furs and over 350 million tropical fish. Climatic change. As climate warms, species will migrate towards higher latitude and altitude in both hemispheres. The increase in the amount of CO2 in the air affected by physiological functioning of plant and species composition. Moreover, aquatic ecosystem, particularly coral reef, mangrove swamp, and coastal wetlands, are vulnerable to change in climate. In principle, coral reefs, the most biological diverse marine system, are potentially vulnerable to change in both sea level and ocean temperature. While most coral systems should be able to grow at a sufficient pace to survive a 15 to 95 centimeter sea level rise over the next century. A sustained increasing of several degrees centigrade would threaten the long-term viability of many of these systems. A need for conservation of biodiversity. Biodiversity conservation, the practice of protecting and preserving the wealth and variety of species, habitats, ecosystem, and genetic diversity on the planet is important for our health, wealth, food, fuel, and services we depend on. It plays an integral role in supporting many sectors of development. Food security depends upon natural resources that form a basic of food production. Biodiversity conservation protects plant, animal, microbial and genetic resource for food production. Agriculture and ecosystem function such as fertilizing the soil, recycling nutrients, regulating pest and disease, controlling erosion, and pollinating crops and trees. At the same time, unsustainable agriculture production and use of wild species for food or fuel can reduce biodiversity. Biodiversity conservation is a vital for economic growth and poverty reduction. A majority of the world poor land is rural areas and depend upon forests, water, wetland, fields, and pastures for their livelihoods. Some 1.6 billion peoples in the world rely on forest and non-timber product for income and subsistence. In the developing world alone, 2.6 billion people depend on fisheries for protein and livelihoods. Seafood is also the most highly traded food commodity internationally. In 2008, fish and shellfishing export from developing countries exceeded the value of coffee, rubber, cocoa, tea, tobacco, meat, and rice combined. Biodiversity conservation can help address the effect of climate change. Conserving habitat can reduce the amount of carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere. conserving mangroves and other coastal ecosystem can less disaster impact of climate change such as flooding and storm surges. Projects that reduce the vulnerability of species and ecosystem to climate change impact can safeguard essential ecosystem services such as air and water purification, pollination and food production and carbon sequestration. Cycles of contrasted natural resources are often the root of conflict. Mismanaging natural resource and harming biodiversity can increase poverty and instability. Helping communities and individuals secure right to use natural resource and involving local communities is responsible. Managing them can prevent or minimize conflict and provide opportunities for economic growth. Deforestation. It is defined as the removal of falling of trees for industrial setups, making building for rehabilitation, lodging, agriculture or grazing operation. The variety of plants and animals existing on earth are essential for the well-being and survival of mankind. Today, a major threat to survival of mankind is deforestation. Causes of deforestation. Rapid urban development. Clearance of agriculture field to grow more food. Nowadays, with the growing population, the need of human being has also increased. To meet the daily needs, the balance in nature is getting imbalanced. Huge population requires more space to live in, more food to eat, more accessories and equipments to lead comfortable life. Consequently, the nature is suffering. It may be used to fulfill fuel requirement for cooking, timber exploitation for constructing purpose. Huge number of trees are being cut down to meet the need for increasing land for housing, food, industries, etc. Using land for setting up industries, trees are cut to meet the need for wood used in manufacturing paper, furniture in food industry. Consequence of deforestation. The various consequences of deforestation are as follows. A reduced rainfall, imbalance of atmospheric gases, loss of natural habitat, change in climate, decrease in water level. A reduced rainfall. The areas that are devoid of forest get reduced rainfall and may create drought-like situation. Deforestation leads to a decrease in the rainfall and hence lower the level of groundwater. This may lead to situation called drought where people suffer from the scarcity of water and hunger. Imbalance of atmospheric gases. Plants take in the carbon dioxide during the process of photosynthesis and exhale oxygen, but less number of trees lead to an increasing the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Deforestation disturbs the balance between carbon dioxide and oxygen gas in atmosphere, which further result in increase in carbon dioxide leading to global warming. Once the carbon dioxide is increased, then the carbon dioxide gas trap the heat rays reflected from the Earth's surface, and this will result in increasing in temperature on Earth, and it will disturb the water cycle too and may reduce rainfall. This could cause drought. Loss of natural habitat. There are some species which live on trees and thereby cutting down of trees destroyed home of these species. Changing in climate. Deforestation changes the climatic condition. They increase temperature, alters the water cycle and lead to reduction of rainfall. This result in occurrence of situation called drought. It also result in the alteration of properties of soil. Deforestation lead to soil erosion because roots plant hold the soil firmly and hence prevent the soil erosion. But lesser number of trees result in the removal of top layer of soil, which in turn expose the lower portion of soil, which is hard, rocky, contain less humus and is less fertility. In this way, a fertile land gets converted to a barren land. This is called desertification. A decreasing in water level. Deforestation decreases the water holding capacity of soil, which in turn reduce the environment of water to the lower ground from the upper part of the ground, resulting in the increased changes of flood, or we can say that it is also decrease the infiltration rate of water into the ground. As you know, now forests play an important role, therefore they have to be conserved. Conservation of forest. As forests are helpful to maintain ecological equilibrium in environment, and thereby there is a immediate need to conserve it also. We know that forests play an important role. Different ways of conserving forest. Reforestation, preventing forest fire, grazing in forest is to be controlled. Reforestation, replantation of the vegetative area. It means the process restoring and recreating areas of forest. It includes growing more and more plants. Preventing forest fire, to make sure fire are not carelessly ignited, we should take special precautions. This might threaten people and kill wildlife and also destroy forest. Thus we can say that prevention of forest fire is necessary. Grazing in forest is to be controlled. We should keep an eye on grazing in forest, as grazing control actually prevents soil erosion, which is again essential. As we know, top layer is fertile as well as habitat for various organisms. Plants grow on the top layer and it is also a habitat of many small organisms. The food also using for the animals, herbivores. Hunting and wildlife. Everyone should respect with wild animals as the live, breathing, sentient being they are. We should leave them in the wild and let them live their natural without human intervention, predation or destruction of their habitat. Hunting and fishing for sport, the portal means of showing dominance over wildlife and exotic animals. Mounted heads or bodies in homes do not show the respect we should all have for the wild animals in our environment. We can learn to coexist with native wildlife and exotic animal if we simply acknowledge that they too have a right to alive. Wildlife conservation. Wildlife conservation is the practice of protecting animal species and their habitat. Living with wildlife. From the birds at our feeder to deer in our local park, wildlife is everywhere. Spot hunting. Amongst NHS 12 guiding principle is a globe to discourage hunting, especially for sport. Migration. Migration is a ethology and regularly, usually seasonal, movement of all or part of animal population to and from a given area. Familiar migrants include many birds, hoofed animals, especially in East Africa and in the Arctic tundra, bats, whales, and porpoises, seals, and fishes such as salmon. See the picture for migration of the some animals. Migration can be constructed with emigration, which involves changing in location, not necessarily followed by the return journey, invasion or interruption, both of which involve the appearance and subsequent disturbance of great number of animals at irregular times and location, and range expansion, which tends to enlarge the distribution of a species, particularly in breeding area. The migration cycle is often annual and is closely linked with the cyclic pattern of the season. The migration of most birds and mammals and many of the fishes are on a yearly cycle. In many cases, salmon and eels, animals with a relatively long lifespan, return to their place of birth in order to reproduce and eventually die. In other cases, as in certain invertebrates, where the animals has relatively a brief lifespan and reproduce rapidly, migration may not occur in every generation. The daily movements of certain fishes and invertebrates have also been called migration because of their regular occurrence. This type of movement, however, is not to be confused with migration in the strict sense. See the migration of birds. Most of the migration involved horizontal travel. The distance traveled by be a few millions or several thousand of miles. Some migration take a vertical direction and involve no appreciable horizontal movements. Certain aquatic animals, for example, move from deep water to surface according to the season. Certain birds, mammals, and insects migrate altitudinally in mountains areas, going for the upper zone where they breed to the foothills or plain during the season. When the weather is severe and unfavorable, such vertical travel involved essentially the same type of environmental change as horizontal or latitudinal migration over long distance. Wildlife. Wildlife represent all non-domesticated animals living in their natural habitat like lion, elephant, etc. and found in forest. Increasing in population also lead to increase in demand for using land for various purposes, including housing. Due to this, the habitats of many organisms are being destroyed, and thus we can say that our wildlife is in threat. Threatened species. ICUN, Red List of Threatened Species, also called IUCN Red List, one of the most well-known object assessment system for classifying the status of plants, animals and others organisms threatened with extinction. The International Union of Conservation of Nature unveiled this assessment system in 1994. It contained explicit criteria and categories to classify the conservation status of individual species on the basis of their probability of extinction. See the diagram. All species, evaluated species, adequate data, threatened categories. NE means not evaluated, DD means data deficient, LC least concern, NT near threatened, VU vulnerable, EN endangered, CR critically endangered, EW exit in the wild, EX exit, increasing the risk of extinction. After a species is evaluated by the IUCN, it is placed into one of 8 categories based on its current conservation status. Species. They are a group of population capable of interbreeding to produce fertile offspring and have common characteristics. Normally, members of a same species breed amongst themselves and not with a member of other species. For example, in forest, there are a variety of animals like lion, deer, elephant. Lion is able to breed with only lion. Lion cannot breed with deer. International Union of Conservation of Nature and Natural Resource. The International Union of Conservation of Nature is an international organization dedicated to finding pragmatic solution to our most pressing environment and development changes. The organization published the IUCN Red List, compiling information from a network of conservation organization to rate which species most endangered. The IUCN supports scientific research, manages file projects globally, and bring government, non-government organization, United Nations agency, companies and local communities together to develop and implement policy. IUCN is the world's oldest and largest global environmental network, a democratic membership union. IUCN state version is a just world that value and conserve nature. Its mission is to influence, encourage and assist societies throughout the world to conserve the integrity and biodiversity of nature and to ensure that any use of natural resource is equitable and ecological sustainable. Wildlife species on the basis of being threatened or exiting or being classified into different categories. Endemic species, vulnerable species, endangered species, critically endangered species. Endemic species. Endemic species are those species of plants. Species. Endemic species are those species of plants, animals which are found exclusively in a particular area. They are not naturally found anywhere else. A particular type of animal or plant may be endemic to a zone, a state of country. For example, giant squirrel, which is found only in South Asia. Wild mango tree, which they are only found in uh, Pachama Biosphere Reserve. Vulnerable species. It includes those organisms that are likely to become endangered unless the circumstances that are not fit for this survival improve. They are not at present in endangered but will be in endangered. For example, tiger is a vulnerable species. Venus flytrap plant is insectivorous plant and feed in insect. They have special modification through which it can trap insects. Endangered species. It includes all those organisms that are at risk of becoming extinct. For example, tiger. These are the risks becoming extinct due to the following reason: changing environment, predator parameters. They are already few in numbers. Critically endangered species. It includes those organisms who are a very few in numbers and their numbers is likely to decrease further. It indicates the organism with the highest risk category of endangered species. A red data book. Red data book is a source of book which keeps a record of all the endangered animals and plants. There are different red data books for plants, animals and other species. Each species has different red data book and it helps to remind the name of species which are endangered. It is maintained by the International Union of Conservation of Natural Resources. It contains the most update information of the global conservation status of species. Conservation of wildlife. To prevent the deforestation and for conservation of forest and wildlife, the government has implemented many rules, methods and policies. Among us, many steps are called sanctuaries, national parks and biosphere reserves have been marked where activities like plantation, cultivation, grazing, hunting, poaching, etc. are prohibited. It refers the prevention, protection, restoration of wildlife and their environment. It includes the following activities: the Inaction of Wildlife Act, Species Prevention and Assemblage, National Park Sanctuary, Protected Area. The Intact of Wildlife Act, it provides the protection of rare species like python, elephants, tigers of wildlife by prohibiting their hunting for various reasons. In this way, we can save them. Species preservation of assemblage. Species preservation and assemblage can be done by setting up the national parks and sanctuary. See the picture. National park, it is an area reserved for the welfare of wildlife and is strictly banned the activities like hunting, poaching, grazing, etc. We can also say that it is large and diverse enough to protect whole set of ecosystem. National park preserve flora, fauna, landscape and historical object of an area. For example, in the Satpura National Parks, rock shelters and rock painting are also preserved along with the flora and fauna. Jim Corbett National Park is a national park which is located in Naididal where people can go and see the natural beauty, but they are not supposed to do hunting and poaching. Sanctuaries. Sanctuary is an area preserving for the conservation and protection of wildlife, and operation like hunting, cutting timber trees, collection of minor forest product, etc. are allowed in sanctuary. Hunting and poaching is strictly prohibited. A sanctuary may be a reserved natural area means for the preservation and development of threatened endangered species. For example, there is a Gazra Wildlife Sanctuary for rhinoceros in Assam. Biosphere reserve are areas for terrestrial and coastal ecosystem, promoting solution to reclaim the conservation of biodiversity with a suitable use. They are internationally recognized, nominated by the national governments, and remain under the sovereign jurisdiction of the state where they are located. Biosphere reserve serve in some ways as living laboratories for testing out the demonstrating integrated management of land, water, and biodiversity. Collectively, biosphere reserve from the world network. Within the network, exchanging of information, experience, and personal or facilitated. The Man and Biosphere Program recognized areas that a area typically of the world major terrestrial or coastal ecosystem demonstrate innovative approaches to living and working in the harmony with nature, and demonstrating how to achieve a sustainable balance between conserving natural ecosystem and biodiversity and forest fostering sound economic developments. In the world, there are more than 600 biosphere reserve in the over 100 countries. In Canada, there are 16 biosphere reserve in 8 provinces. The Fundy Biosphere Reserve is a member of the World Network of Biosphere Reserve since 2007. In 2015, it also joined the World Network of Iceland and Coastal Biosphere Reserve, a sub-network of the WNBR, formed by the representative of 20 island and coastal biosphere reserve around the world, which aim to study implementation and disseminate island and coastal strategies to prove the biodiversity and heritage, promote sustainable developments, and adapt to the migrate the effect of climatic changes. Regulating hunting. Hunting has been a major cause of exiting and endangered of many species. Most extinct over the past several hundred years are mainly due to over harvesting of food, fashion, and profit, and all of this hunting to gather their supplies and materials. Hunting both legal and illegal, it is the main threat of to the world life. More and more forests are becoming unoccupied and empty due to the killing of animals. There are many solutions that can be implemented to society, and they are very straightforward. A country should have more strict laws of regulating when a person is allowed to hunt, where a person is allowed to hunt, and what animals they able to hunt, and the method used to hunt. In Ontario, there are strict law imposed to become a hunter. The hunter must pass 2 tests called the Canadian Frame Safety Course exam and the Ontario Hunter Education Course exam. This will reduce the amount of uneducated hunters and will decrease overhunting. Strict hunting season must be in place, meaning a specific season where the hunter may hunt. This will reduce endangerments and it will allow natural predation and hybridation to take place. Where hunting is prohibited, the government posts saying no hunting, or park rangers should be able to give out fines for illegal hunting. Although the hunters themselves are involved in many programs to help the environment and wildlife, there should be more programs and even mandatory laws, such as for each animal that you hunt, the hunter must do something in return to make sure that their footprint has balance. There should be more mandatory programs which force hunter to help maintain and enhancing wildlife and their habitat. Ontario is making programs for hunting because the money for hunter license fees contributes to monitoring and protecting wildlife. This is the image hunter and their families give back to the environment, making sure the environment is maintained and the life for animals and enhanced. See the picture. Captive breeding programs an essential tool for the conservation of endangered species. The aim of captive breeding is to bolster an existing population to achieve population size large enough to allow the species to the reintroduction to the wild in one or more of the areas which is historically inhabited. No one can be in any doubt today about the reality of the biodiversity crisis and environmental destruction apparent in the loss of decline of species worldwide. The living plant index is one measure of the loss of biological diversity. It uses indicator of global biodiversity revealed that the vertebrate population have declined at almost 30% over the period from 1970 to 2007. According to the International Union of Conservation of Natural, if we focus on planet's mammal species, 23% of them are threatened to some degree. The degradation of the habitat and fragmentation of the population are often the main causes of their decline, but pressure for the hunting and competitive with the domestic animals have also played a significant role in the dispersion of many of these species, which until recently were abundant in the world. Given the state of loss of biodiversity, tools are needed to restore the population of some species. In the technical guidelines of management executive population for conservation 2002, the IUCN state that a global conservation of maintenance of existing current genetic diversity and viable population of all taxa in the wild in order to maintain biological interaction, ecological progress of function, and it adds and threaten the biodiversity in situ, continue the expand the taxa have been survived, increasing the human modified environments, threaten which is include a habitat loss, climate change, unsustainable use, and invasive organism, pathogenic organism can be difficult to control. Important wildlife project by Government of India. See the project of tiger. One of the most successful wildlife conservation project, tiger, which was initiated by back in 1972, has not only contributed to the conservation tiger but also the entire ecosystem. This project sponsored by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, about 47 tigers reserves situated in more than 17 regions, including Corbett National Parks, Ranthambore National Parks, and part of this project which conducts assessment of number of tigers, their habitat, hunting habitats under the supervision of the Tiger Task Force project. Tiger has been seen significant success is recovery of the habitat and increase in the population of the tiger in the reserve areas for Sandri 268 in 9 reserves in 1972, about 1000 in 28 reserves in 2006 to 2000 tigers in 2016. Project of elephant initiated in 1992, the Government of India project elephant aims to conserving elephant and their habitat and of migrate routes by developing scientific and planned management measures. Under the project, welfare and domestic elements is also considered. Issue like migration of human elephant conflict are also taken care of. The project endeavors is to strength to measure for the protection of elephant against poachers and unhunted unnatural death. Conservation of crocodile. See, the project is yet another successful venture by Government of India, conservation of crocodile, whose species were vary the existing ones. Green-Line project. 3 months after, at least 20 lines is Gujarat's subcontinent to a verse. The central and the Gujarat government announced the Asiatic Lion Conservation Project. The world, there would also be automated sensor grid that would have a magnetic sensor, move sense, the infrared head sensor. The project also seek the divided the greater Gir region that include the area other than the existing Gir National Park, sanctuary in Girnar, Paina and Mitalia into various zone and formulated various zone plan and then plans for their governments. Total budget of the project 3 years, the amount of nearly India 9,784 lakhs will be funded from the centrally sponsored scheme development wildlife habitats, with the contributing the region being 60 to 40% central and state governments. Objectives. The underlying objective of this act is the protected the animals and birds of the country. The Forest Conservation Act as 1980 armored at India a rapid deforestation and the resulting environmental degradation. The central government enhanced the Forest Conservation Act is 1980 as amended in 1988. The act requires the approval of the central government before the state deserves a reserve forest use forest land for non-forest purpose against the forest land to private person or corporation or clears forest land for the purpose of reforestation. Wildlife Protection Act. The Wildlife Protection Act 1972 is an act that Parliament of India enhanced the protection of the plant and animal species. It extends to the whole of India except the state of Jammu and Kashmir, which has its own Wildlife Act. It has 6 schedules which give varying degree of protections. Given for some objective questions, you can clarify it. Thank you. Question